Welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had time to get some refreshments, some drinks, some food, a little bit of time for conversations. Conversation's still happening, which is great. What a morning! How did we feel that went? Was that good? That was great. Hands up those that are feeling uncomfortably excited at the moment. Yeah, lots of it, which is great. Fantastic. Loving the enthusiasm. So thank you for your attention. This afternoon we've got even more exciting, even more thrilling speakers. So I'm really pleased you're able to stay with us. But before we do, what I'd like to do is go to a commercial break. Can we run the VT, please?
Regis Worldwide is a supplier of flexible office space solutions. We have a network of over 2,000 locations worldwide.
We have about 160 country variations of our main website. Regis has got tags on our website in order to gather information about the behavior of the visitors.
The tagging of all of our web properties is crucial. Without the tags, we don't have the insight. Without the insight, we can't improve the performance.
Google Tag Manager is a container tag solution, so rather than an advertising tag in and of itself, it simply manages those advertising tags.
It is seamlessly integrated to all the Google products,
like Google AdWords and Google Analytics, because it's almost ubiquitous in the market. All third-party tags work in the Google Tag Manager. We now get analytics and reporting on campaigns very quickly indeed, and we can meet the needs of the PPC team, of individual country managers, and also because it's free, there was no problem getting the sign-off. We didn't have to go through a business case and an ROI process to get it approved internally.
As a marketer, you now have direct control over deploying tags.
We can deliver insights far quicker to the business than we used to be able to do.
So your time to market has improved drastically.
Save our development teams lots of time and allow us to deploy our own tags in much shorter time spans.
We are able to deploy tags for a campaign in a matter of minutes, while before it was in a matter of days.
It's easy for the IT department to see exactly who's done what in the system, manage user permissions in bulk, look at revision history to see what has happened if something has gone wrong, and just roll back to a previous version. So both sides are absolutely in control of the process.
The online channel is now the single most important channel across over 100 markets. We have now deployed Google Tag Manager across all of our online assets, our main core websites and all their language variants, but also all our paid search landing pages and all our mobile sites. And the benefit of that is that the quicker we can get the information we need, the quicker we can optimize, the more money we make each month, each year, and the more leads we get into our business, because that is the job of the online channel for Regis.
Fantastic. Guy, great job. Anyone who hasn't noticed Guy, who's in the video, sat at the front row. He wanted to get as close to his video as he possibly could. Thank you so much. I didn't. Sorry about that. So great. Again, in that video, they highlighted some really important issues that we've already covered today, talking about the importance of technology and in fact, how to work with the IT department, the speed of deployment, those types of things. And Guy at the end there is talking very much about the return on investment, about the driving the profitability, which Maggie spoke about before. Another thing that was already been touched on today is very much around the consumer and being consumer-centric or customer-centric, or being, as Maggie calls it, putting the customer into context. And that's really important. And what's really important for us as marketers, as people involved in B2B, is that absolutely our customers may not have changed, but the way, as Kevin pointed out, media has changed and media consumption has changed. And the way that they want to engage with us has dramatically changed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to call up the next speaker who's going to talk about this, tipping point in the consumer journey, in how our customers in the B2B space are changing the way that they want to engage with us. So I'm very pleased to welcome Hanne to the stage. Hanne's been working in B2B for 16 years. Unfortunately for her, many of those years she's been working with me. And I've learned loads from her, so I'm really pleased to bring Hanne up. Welcome.
Love a bit of Michael Jackson. Right, so we've talked about data this morning. Kevin talked about data. and we've talked about stimulus, and Kirk was talking about the rivers of thinking. So my role in the next 25 minutes is to give you lots of data about the B2B decision makers. So that'll be exciting data. We love data. We feed on data. But also the reason why I'm going to give you that is I want to be your stimulus to really ignite get you out of those rivers of thinking, get you thinking differently. So that's my role for the next 20 or so minutes. So the research that I'm going to share with you now is new research that we've conducted in the US towards the end of 2014. I hear you saying, US research, come on, Google, can't you do Google, UK research for us? But actually, I would argue that what I'm going to show you is going to be even more important and probably even more pronounced in the UK market than it is in the US market. We often see that the UK market is more savvy, more digitally savvy in the way that uses digital information sources, and that is the same thing in B2B as well. So the research was done with Millward Brown towards the end of 2014. It was based on 3,000 business decision makers, as well as 13 months of clickstream data on B2B purchase process. So really robust data pieces that we can dive into. And also, more importantly, this is a repeat of research that we did in 2012. So we can now start seeing what's shifted in the last 2 years. What are the tipping points that we're seeing in the way that B2B decision makers are using digital in that purchase process? And that's what I want to share with you now. So when we did this research 2 years ago, the big tipping point that we saw was that B2B decision makers were using digital much more than the year before in that purchase decision-making cycle, jumping from 71% to 88%. So what is the big reveal this year, I hear you ask? Well, the big reveal is 89%. Ooh. So no big reveal in terms of adoption of digital by B2B decision makers. It's reaching, I guess, to an extent, saturation levels at this point in the way that B2B decision makers are using it and the mix of people in that decision-making process as well. However, the real tipping points come from how people are using it and who the B2B decision makers are. So those are the ones that we've delved deeper into the data on and that I'm going to share with you now. But before we do that, let's just step back a little bit and look at the overall market and what's happening. So in that same space of time, from 2012 to 2014, we've seen that the time spent with digital has overtaken the time spent with TV. Any guesses in this room on what has driven this? And just shout them out. What's driven? Mobile, great. And I heard YouTube, video. So those are absolutely two things that are increasing the time spent with digital. And we're seeing this from a consumer perspective. However, we're also seeing that in B2B. And we'll talk about that. But from an overall standpoint, we're seeing 80 to 90% increases in time spent with mobile and video in the last 2 years. So huge drivers, huge changes in the overall digital landscape. From a B2B point of view, the two things that this research really showed us insights into was the decision maker themselves, and also how they use digital in that research process. So let's go into starting with the who. In 2012, when we looked at this research, we had a look at the buyer demographic, and we didn't really see anything insightful here. Very similar, even distributions across the kind of decision-maker demographic from an age standpoint. But when we looked at it this year, we saw a huge shift. And that huge shift took place in the 18 to 34-year-old age bracket. What we saw is that now almost half of your B2B decision makers are under 34 years of age. That's a huge jump of 70% in those 2 years. If you think, let's stop here for a moment and think about those 18 to 34-year-olds. First of all, they're younger than I am, unfortunately. Second of all, the oldest people in that age group were born in 1980. So if you think of people that were born in 1980, they joined the workforce at the end of the dot-com crash. They have always known just work where there's email around. So these people are quite different to perhaps the typical B2B decision makers they would have thought of. If we think about the youngest people in that age group, they were born in 1990s. These are my little sister, my 13 years younger little sister is in this group. These people came to Workforce when the bring your own device, mobiles, bringing iPhones, bringing perhaps Androids already then into your workforce to take over the BlackBerry. So they've always had mobile devices as part of their integral day-to-day lives. So these people are digital natives. So the big implication for me from here is that how are you changing the way that you market to B2B decision makers if half of them now are under 34 years of age? The media consumption behaviors of under 34-year-olds are dramatically different to those of the 45-plus age range, as you can imagine. They're very digitally savvy. So my call out to you as B2B marketers, as agencies advising clients on marketing and media, is how do you message, how do you engage with this younger demographic, and how do you change your media mix as a result as well? Also, when we looked at this buyer demographic, we looked at, of course, we know that in B2B, it's not just one decision maker, there are multiple decision makers that are involved in that purchase decision-making process. The more complex, the more they are. On average, it's about 5.4 people involved in the B2B decision-making process. We know that the C-level audience is very, very important within that. C-level being your CXO, CEO, CMOs, CTOs, whoever they are that you're targeting. Very important. 64% have final authority in that decision-making process. However, one thing that stood out for me was that those influencers, those people that put those short lists of companies together and pass them over to the final decision makers, the ones that go through the consideration cycle and do the research, they're super important as well. We're seeing that 1 in 4 of them actually have final purchase authority. And more importantly, 81% of them influence that purchase decision. So the call out to you is make sure that you're not just focusing on the final check signer, effectively the last click in that purchase process from your perspective. Think about the entire purchase and all of the people involved in that, and think about those influencers. How can you influence those influencers? And to do that, I want to show you how one company, Sprint Business, has changed the way that they message, the way that they talk to their customers to influence these influencers. So if you could please play the video.
People say I'm the boss around here, and all these people, some say they work for me. They don't. These people carry the whole business on their shoulders, helping customers, using new solutions, finding better ways to work together with talent and energy and enthusiasm. These people, they don't work for me. I work for them.
So a little bit American, I know. However, I think that was really interesting to see how they were messaging to the influencer as well as to the C-level at the same time. And my question to you is, in your marketing, in your advertising, how are you messaging and how are you changing the messages depending on who you're looking to reach? And how different is your content and how you use it as well to those influencers and to those C-levels? When I was thinking about another example to share with you, of course, the easiest one, but everyone knows it, is the Volvo Trucks one. Show Van Damme, show how he was able to communicate a massively complex B2B solution selling Volvo trucks in a really compelling, engaging, emotionally kind of heart-wrenching way with a great actor in there. We all know it though, so let's not show that. However, my point is that there are lots of companies that are starting to do this now. Lots of companies that are starting to market to influencers in a much more different way than traditional B2B marketing has. Traditional B2B marketing has always been about features, functions, benefits, all of those techie things that we say, the cost effectiveness, all of those things, those messages. But you can get those messages across in a very engaging way that is probably more impactful and will stand out from the crowd. So could we please play the second video? So Caterpillar, how many of you had seen this first of all? One person. So they've actually done a series of these built for it trials. They've got all great ones like building a giant or doing a giant Jenga game with 2 of their forklift trucks. Or having one of their trucks go into a glass and china shop to see how precisely it can maneuver around without breaking anything. Amazing videos and greatly, in a great way messaging their USPs without having to lay them out in text or in the way that traditionally would have been done. Video is a great way to communicate that. They've got over 1 million views already for this latest sandcastle one, and over 2 million for the previous Jenga. So great kind of what we call more kind of themed content that they're creating that is very much top of the funnel and hero as well. Gets them into the consideration set. So we've now talked about the who, how to engage these younger decision makers in B2B. And let's move on to the how. So how are B2B decision makers using digital in the purchase process, and how has that changed more importantly? Now, in order to do that, we need to step back a bit, and we need to think about the research that we did 2 years ago. This was research with CEB, Corporate Executive Board, and what it found was that 57% of the purchase cycle in B2B is complete before speaking to a salesperson. It found that a purchase process is very much self-directed, digital, and inbound in nature. What we've seen, what's happened since those 2 years when we've done the research, is that we've seen research from other parties that say in tech, in some tech industries, we're seeing that this 57% is now actually 70% before speaking to a salesperson. And in very kind of more small business targeted campaigns, it could be even up to 90%. So we're seeing that the digital journey is now longer and it's more intense, and the B2B decision makers are more sophisticated in the way that they use digital. So let's look at the specific information sources that people are using in this decision-making process. So what hasn't changed is that the number 1 source of information that they're using in that purchase process is still search. 90% of people use search to do B2B research along that purchase journey. However, the way that they're using search has changed. And this is quite interesting. What we found is that in that 57% of the purchase cycle, so before the buyer has got in touch with a salesperson, before they have got in touch with your company or your competitor's company, they have done on average 12 different searches. That has grown tremendously over the last 2 years. In fact, it's 6-fold what we saw 2 years ago. So we are seeing that with people's availability of information, but also their sophistication in using search and other information sources in that research process, they're actually doing more research than ever before. We're also seeing that in that research process, 3/4 of the searches that they start with are generic, and they move between generic and brand as they go all the way through. So the question to me in this is that if they're doing, let's say, 12 searches to now, for example, fill in a lead form, how are you tracking that? How are you measuring that? How are you attributing that? Because if you are on last click, first of all, and you're only valuing that 12th interaction, not the 11 that happened before, you're undervaluing anything that happened before. And you're not there potentially when people are looking, when they're top of the funnel, looking to get you or your competitors into the consideration set. And this is only in search. If you're thinking about the other information sources that they use along the web, maybe they're exposed to display, maybe they're exposed to mobile or video. It's not taking those into account either. So make sure it makes attribution and measurement even more important than ever before, this more intense use of digital. The second most important information source in that purchase process hasn't changed either. It's your sites, your competitor sites, your reseller sites, and so on. So these are sites where people come to find more about your products and solutions. And overall, what we've seen in the 100% of the purchase cycle, that traffic to B2B sites has increased by 2-fold. So we're seeing that people are using your sites more intensely in that purchase process, just like they are using the rest of digital. But an interesting development that we've seen is that in that 57% of the purchase cycle before getting in touch with the salesperson, with our clickstream research, we found that people were considering fewer brands than before. 60% of the B2B decision makers were only visiting 2 sites or 2 brands before getting in touch with the salesperson. So we're seeing that people are becoming more selective than ever before. And if they're becoming more selective, brands are becoming more and more important. There are still those shortcuts that people have when they're making those decision-making decisions. So make sure that you have a really strong brand strategy to make sure that you're in that consideration set and that people are much more likely to consider you, come to your site in that 57% of the purchase cycle. We're also seeing that, again, in that 57% of the purchase cycle, that it's likely that the B2B decision makers will visit your site only once before making the decision of whether you're in the shortlist or not. Of course, if you have a long purchase cycle, that might be more visits than that, but on average, that's what we see. So you have one chance at getting into the consideration set, one chance of giving the right information to the right buyer, one chance of having a great user experience, having the right content on your site. So it's really, really important that you have you invest in your content strategy, user experience, and layout as part of it. But also think about how you can reach people when they're not on your site. How can you go further up the funnel? Mid-funnel and top-funnel strategies become more important, but also a remarketing strategy so that then you can reiterate your key USPs to the people that have already been engaged with you. Let's move on to mobile. And we saw that from a consumer perspective, mobile was driving drastically the time spent with digital. We don't see as drastic a change from a B2B perspective. 42% of B2B decision makers are using mobile in that research process. That's up only 5 percentage points in the last 2 years. So it's no huge increases, certainly not a big tipping point that we could see. However, the way that people are using mobile is certainly more intense, in the same way that we saw with search. First of all, we're seeing that those 42% of people that are using mobile in the research process, those are searching on mobile much more than ever before. The searches on mobile have grown 3-fold in the last 2 years. More importantly, we're also seeing that, unlike 2 years ago, when people were using mobile very much at the top of the funnel, at early research stages, and then converting on others, we're seeing that the 42% that use mobile are actually wanting to use it all the way through the purchase cycle. There's 91% growth in those people using it all the way through, which means that from a user perspective and from your site perspective, you need to make sure that you give them information that supports them in all of those steps. Not just at the early stages, but all the way through, if that is possible in your category, in the way that you sell your products and services. And one thing that we often hear from our clients is that they say, but people aren't buying on mobile devices. Well, we are seeing that more people are. There is growth in that. So 24% growth in purchasing B2B on mobile devices as well. But often it's down to the user experience. Often it's down to what you can do on your site as opposed to what people would like to do on your site. So it's really about how can you invest in a really strong mobile experience. And a company that we think is doing this well is VMware. So they have a great mobile experience that's really easy, simple to use. It's interactive, gives you kind of top of the funnel research, but has an interactive product selector tool in there as well. And it's very easy to get in touch with sales. So again, you can't purchase necessarily in this instance, although I think that some of VMware's products can be. But a great example of an enterprise type mobile user experience. So let's move on to video now. And video we often see going in parallel paths to mobile. Both of those are used when people are actively in the research process to answer questions. However, we're seeing that there's a much stronger growth in the way that people are using video in B2B in comparison to the way that they were using mobile. 70% of B2B decision makers now are using video in that research process. Any guesses to what that percentage was in 2012? Just shout them out. 20% is not 5, it was 29%. So amazing, huge 40 percentage point jump in just 2 years in people using video in that research process. this certainly was the second big tipping point that we saw from this research. And I believe that it's not just about the desire by B2B decision makers to consume content in a video format, but it's also because more and more B2B vendors and marketers are providing video content that people can consume in that research process. So second big call out that we have to you as B2B marketers is looking at your video content strategy, looking at how you are answering questions in a video format that help people in that purchase cycle, help answer their questions, but also how are you getting into the consideration set more top of the funnel from a video point of view. And we're seeing that this use of video is much more intense, again, than what we've seen before. Almost half of the B2B decision makers are watching more than 30 minutes of video in that B2B research purchase. That's amazing. And I do believe that it's simply because B2B products and services are so complex, and video is a simple way to consume complex messages instead of reading perhaps a 10-page white paper. Why not have somebody just explain it to me? And people are becoming much more attuned to that type of way of communicating with them. And 1 in 5 of B2B decision makers are even watching over an hour of B2B content in that research process. So what type of content are they looking for them? So this is specifically in that research process that they're going through. Well, they're looking for content that will help them in that research process. Product features, how-tos, professional reviews, even ads because they're finding them informative in many instances. Perhaps because it's about products, features, and benefits. I don't know. However, the call out is that you have to have great content that answers questions when people are researching. We call it hygiene content. But you also need to do great hero pieces of content, like the Caterpillar ones, that help you at the top of the funnel get into the consideration set. And a company that we think is doing a really good job with their video strategy in B2B is Adobe, across their Creative Cloud and their Marketing Cloud side of the business. They have great videos with customer testimonials, product reviews and kind of demos that you can have. All of the content from their thought leadership seminars and events go online as well from a video point of view that people can consume. And they've got great hero pieces that help them get into the consideration set. You all are probably in the Marketing Cloud category of their target market. So if you haven't seen them, have a look. Woo-woo, they talk about the next social media phenomenon in a really funny way, really engaging, to the point, to the challenges that people have in marketing and how they can help solve them. So a great example of video content strategies and advertising strategies, to be honest. So let's look at it a little bit more in detail. A year ago, we did research with Motista that looked at the 57% of the purchase cycle and then wanted to understand what were the tactics that were most impactful within that marketers could do. And the two tactics that had the highest impact on purchase likelihood as well as likelihood to recommend were mobile and video. So those were the two most impactful tactics beyond, more impactful than search, more impactful than display, more impactful than social. And so let's have a look at mobile first of all. So what are people looking for in that research process when they're using mobile devices? It's very much similar things to what we saw from a video point of view, comparing prices, features, reading product information, and so on, getting in touch with the retailer and manufacturer. So the VMware example was a good one where they did all of this. When you have a look at your own mobile user experience, ask yourself whether it does these things and make sure that you adjust it accordingly. What about video then? We already had a look at what kind of video content people are looking for. This is about what people do after they see a video ad or video content piece. They're talking to colleagues, they're finding out more information, sharing that video. All of these are actions that they're taking. They're sharing it in one form or another. They're taking action and coming to your site. So how could you be creating content as well as ads that do this, that inspire people to take an action? And the last piece that we looked into in this research was looking at utility of the different information sources that B2B decision makers use in that research process. And of course, we see that there's really high utility in search, and that utility has increased over the last 2 years as well. However, video is not that far behind. B2B decision makers love video. They love consuming content in that way. It's really helpful for them in that research process. Mobile is a bit further behind, perhaps because of mobile user experience and what you can and can't do. But for that passionate group of people that are using it, it's still highly valuable. And as a benchmark, we also put offline in here. There's a clear call out of here in terms of what's not in balance. And what is not in balance is the investment for marketers specifically on video and mobile in comparison to the others. So that would be a big call out as well that we would call out to you. B2B decision makers are finding these information sources valuable. They're there. Make sure that you match the way that you market to them and the type of content and experiences that you create for them as well. So to summarize then, the key takeaways from the research that we put together, hopefully giving you stimulus to get you out of those rivers of thinking, is that we're seeing that the decision makers are younger than ever before, and that the influencers are more important than you might have thought. So how are you marketing to this changing audience? We're also seeing that the way people are using digital in that research process, in the 57% of the purchase cycle when they haven't yet decided who they're going to buy from, it's getting more intense. They're doing more searches. They're also using mobile all the way through the purchase cycle. How can you make sure that you're adjusting your strategies accordingly? And video stands really on its own 2 feet from this research. We've seen that video usage has really skyrocketed in 2014. And the big call out to you as a result of that is to revise and audit your video strategies and your competitors' video strategies and create content that answers people's questions and help you get into the consideration set. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hanne. Thank you, Hanne, so much. I mean, there's a huge amount of insight in there. I'm not being rude. I'm on my laptop, but I'm actually just checking what you guys are saying about the event. So thank you for being so positive. But there's a huge amount of conversation going on around some of the stats that Hanne was talking about. Are we surprised at some of that data? Are we surprised that the usage is quite so high? Yeah? So, I mean, it just shows how quickly our audience is changing. And this is one of the fascinating things for me in a B2B world, is that we almost forget that we're all consumers at heart. We forget that we're out there doing this thing in our everyday life. And we're now expecting what we're doing in our everyday consumer life to actually transition into what we're doing in our business buying process. So some great information and insight there. So we talked a little bit about how that customer is changing. Now let's get down to the dirty business. How do we actually make this stuff perform? How do we get this stuff actually to work for our businesses in the right way that we want to do it? And I'm pleased to ask David Byrne to join us on stage. Now, David is a performance expert here at Google. And if you're a performance expert at Google, you must be pretty damn hot. So I'm really looking forward to what Dave has to share with us. So please join me in welcoming Dave to the stage.
Thank you very much. So we should probably explain what a performance expert is and exactly what I do before I start jumping into anything here. So really what my goal is to make you guys more money. So who wants to make more money? There's a few people with their hands down, which is kind of worrying. So really what I want to do today is I want to talk to you about making more money. So, I mean, seeing as how most of you put up your hands, it seems like that most of my pitch is already done. So thank you. You've saved us about 20 minutes on that front. But what we're going to be focusing on today is not only about making more money for yourselves, but actually how do you go about changing your business and focusing on digital so that you can actually increase your profits. This is going to be quite a brief overview. There's plenty of materials online, so I will be sharing that afterwards. But this will just give you an overview of how you can really start pinpointing your business towards making more money and more importantly, making profit. So let's start off with a simple quiz. Which advertiser do you feel is doing better? Hands up for advertiser A. Hands up for advertiser B. Okay, so pretty much 90% of you didn't fall into the trap. It really depends on what they're actually focusing on in their business. So there's so many different variables that come into play when it comes to digital marketing or any form of marketing. There are so many different plays at stake here. There's so many different nuances. But in certain situations, when we actually look at somebody that focuses purely on efficiency, there are situations whereby they could actually be missing out on the greater profit that's available to them. This is actually one example here that we actually saw previously, and actually once we moved that advertiser away from efficiency metrics, they realized that actually what was more important to them wasn't the fact that they were getting in a great ROI. What was mattering to them was how much profit were they making at the end of the day, and subsequently how much could they reinvest back into the business. So it's all easy for me to stand up on here and say, guys, profit, that's important. I think everybody kind of knows how important profit is. But how do you actually go about doing this on a digital perspective? So we've pinpointed a 3-step process that's quite general, but actually it applies with pretty much everybody that we've spoken to about this or we've brought this to previously. And I'm going to focus on recognizing value first off. And what recognizing value is all about, it's about really, truly measuring the value of your customer and the value of anybody that's looking into your business. So you may have seen this slide before. I think this slide has been around for years anyway. And we've seen from Hanne as well how complicated the customer journey can be. There are so many different touch points that, as it says here, the customer journey is like a flight map. They jump from different channel, they jump from different devices. It's quite hard to keep track of this. But the important thing is to not narrow your focus and say that if I'm advertising on digital, that's only going to impact my digital sales. If I'm advertising on mobile, it's only going to impact my mobile sales. If I'm advertising on TV, it's only going to impact my direct sales. It's better to look at this from a more holistic perspective and realize that there's the marketing mix here. Now, I see a few faces looking at me saying, we kind of know this already, but it's always good to reinforce this. And we saw from Hanne earlier on as well, looking at B2B in particular, there's 12 queries alone up until the actual engagement point. So there's 12 points of connection there that we need to actually look at and we need to measure. So what does this actually mean at the end of the day? It really means being able to assign a true value to actually what you're investing in. So if you have a 600,000 investment, for example, and you just look at purely online, it may look like that actually you're not getting a huge amount out of that with your investment at the moment. But when actually you start looking at it a little bit more holistically, you may start seeing the other impacts that come into play. So you may actually see that, somebody that's been researching online comes into your store. Maybe actually rather than doing something online, they actually picked up the phone and rang one of your people directly. And it's important to kind of keep a note of these and keep track of these. This way you're able to actually define a true value of what that customer means to you and where that customer is coming from. We've seen great examples of this. So Autobytel, which is, basically they did something similar. One of the things that they struggled with was they had this focus of, okay, well, what are my mobile sales based off of my mobile traffic? What are my tablet sales based off of my tablet traffic? And they thought they had maxed out. They thought they had reached their peak in regards to how much they were investing and how much they were getting out of it. But at once they realized that actually they could start looking at things like cross-device conversions. They also looked at, if they had a TV ad running at certain times, was there an increase in searches for their brand term at that time? they were able to get a much broader view of what was happening to their business. And as a result, they were actually able to go after more revenue and more profit as a result. And this is the important, this is pretty much the cusp of things that we have to remember for today, which is that we need to start looking at profit as your main digital marketing, overall marketing KPI. If you're focused on CPA and ROI, as the demonstration showed you earlier, that could be potentially missing out a huge opportunity for you. So it's always easier said than done, and it's all well and good me saying this, but where's actually the proof behind this? Recently enough, we surveyed 500 advertisers that operate with Google. We split them up into these 3 buckets. We had the first one, which was fixed budgets. So these are the advertisers that sign off their budget at the start of their financial year and have no flexibility on what happens subsequently. And what we found with them was that, they're 15% of the advertisers. They're not getting a huge proportion of the pie that's out there. They're not getting a huge proportion of the overall revenues and profits that are available to them. CPA, ROI. I've kind of mentioned the efficiency metrics again, but you can see here that the majority of advertisers that we reached out to were still using CPA and ROI as their main metrics for digital advertising. And what was happening as a result was that they, again, weren't getting a big enough piece of what was actually available to them. It was the few advertisers that actually said, our main KPI when it comes to digital advertising is profit or customer lifetime value. It was that few that were actually getting the largest amount available to them. So this just shows that, this is proof that this is happening in the industry right now, that the profit-driven marketers are the ones that are really achieving the success. So how do you actually go about doing this? The simple thing for us is to actually define a formula for yourselves that makes sense for your business. We've spoken to many different advertisers, and we've broken it down into 4 very simple areas. Sales, so actually what is actually coming in, and that's the previous piece about the measurement side of things. The margin, the costs that you actually incur, and finally in the investment. And at the end of the day, this will come out with profit. This looks fairly basic, so actually what you want to start doing is you actually want to break it down into a bit more granular detail. So again, this is exactly the same figures as before, but we've started breaking this down into, where were actually the sales coming from? What were the close rates on, any leads that came through? What was the value of the contract per year? How many years did the contract, continue on for? What was the margin behind it? And then things as well that, sometimes are forgotten about is, if you sign up with a business, potentially that, let's just say if they may recommend you to another business. So what's the value in that as well? Are you assigning any value of that new contract that's come to you back to the original contract that actually helped refer that? So things like this, these are all things that can be taken into consideration. This, I would say, is not something to just copy and paste in for your own business. It's important for you to actually analyze how your business operates and what it's doing to make sure that you're going into this. We've also seen that many times that, with a lot of businesses, there could be a bit of a disconnect in relation to, actually what are my margins per product or by category that we're selling. And this is one of the important things with this, is that if we are driving profit for your overall business, it's important to make sure that you have your key stakeholders across the entire organization involved in this as well. Whether that be, your buying teams, whether that be your CFO, whoever needs to be involved in this and give you the information that you can really go out and achieve this, make sure that they're involved in that conversation. At the end of the day, if you're saying to a CFO, I'm going to make more money for this business, there's not many CFOs that will turn around and go, not interested. So this is something that we can really work together on. And AdHarmonics. So AdHarmonics is a digital advertising agency. And this advertising agency had previously done a lot around CPA, ROI. And they actually started working with several different advertisers to make sure that they were actually moving towards a more profit-driven approach. And as a result of this, actually, they started looking at not only the profit from one particular sale or one particular contract that came in, but what was the lifetime value of that customer and what was that actually bringing in for the business as a whole. And as a result of this, you can actually see that although they only increased conversions by 60%, I say only, but 60% is still fairly high, but they were also able to increase their profits by 170%. And this was as a result of them broadening their focus away from what was happening at that, that one search, that one click, that one conversion, and looking at the whole customer journey and the whole customer journey post-click as well. So looking at the lifetime value and how important that customer was to them. So I've spoken to you a lot about, the measurement piece, about actually the value of the customer. I've spoken to you about moving the KPI away. The final part of this process is actually the simplest process. And it's actually just going out and capturing the demand. So if you're really profit-driven and you have a better understanding of who your customer is, or even a good idea, then it's time to go out. I think when it comes to digital marketing, one of the things that we hear from a lot of people is we're not able to track everything. The fact of the matter is that we're never going to be able to understand every single individual person 100%. We're going to get a good idea, though. We're going to get a good idea and concept behind who our customers are, where they are, what they're doing. And once you have that, that's the time to go out and start capturing them. So the first thing I would say is going back to the fixed budgets side of things. I think, if you're looking at your business from a fixed budgets point of view, that's something that needs to change. With everything that's happening, with all of the different touch points across different marketing channels, we can't always know what's going to happen in the future. There's going to be a new trend. 6 years ago, was anybody researching on mobile? 5 years ago, was anybody researching on YouTube? These things came about, they're new innovations, and that completely changes things. What happens if, people start researching on their watch? And that may sound a bit silly, but I actually did research on my watch earlier on today, which looked really stupid waiting for the bus, to be honest. There was a lot of strange looks I got from actually speaking into my watch. But anyway, side note. But the important thing is that there is going to be so many different changes and innovations that we're going to have to be more flexible and make sure that we are actually following the customer rather than the customer following us and going where we say they are or where we want them to be. The other thing as well is, as we saw, was that anybody that has fixed budgets often aren't capturing all that's there. This is just an example here of the difference between what a leader in a market or a laggard in a market might look like. So you have the category leader with their flexible budgets. They're able to capture demand whenever it's available, whenever it's there. Their mindset is going after growth, profit, making sure that they're capturing the customers that are valuable to them. Then you have the other person who is fixed budgets, which may be based off of ROI or based off of the previous year's spend, and they may be more focused on efficiency. And as a result, they're not able to really focus on, you know, what the actual trends are happening right now, right this moment. The next thing as well is that, you know, we have so many different touch points. We have so many different types of people that are doing research constantly, are making decisions constantly. I mean, you just need to look through some of the stats in Hanne's deck to just show you how much is happening and how much is different within the industry. Now, there are so many different touch points that it is important to realize that, you know, it isn't just search. It isn't just YouTube. It isn't just mobile. That it's a mixture of all of these. And with a lot of Google tools, you have, you know, demographic targeting, you have interest targeting. These are all things that can be leveraged. I would also point out that, you know, this doesn't apply just to Google tools. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but this also involves things like Facebook or, you know, other marketing channels that I probably shouldn't mention. But the important thing is that anything that you do on this side of things in relation to really driving the profit and really making sure that you're going after your customers, this is something that can be rolled out across all different channels to make sure that you've got the right marketing mix for your business and making the most impact. So, another example of somebody that's done this is Airbnb. And I think, you know, most people have probably heard of Airbnb at this point. But the thing is that Airbnb actually, when they first launched, small company trying to make their way in their market, and the CFO at the time actually had set fixed budgets throughout their startup period. Probably because, you know, he was very cautious about, you know, how much they could actually invest in there. But what they found was, as time progressed, that as interest increased in their business, the fixed budgets didn't make any sense anymore. There was more people out there that really wanted to hear from Airbnb and were interested in what Airbnb had to offer. And what they started doing was they moved away from this fixed budgets approach. They moved away from the efficiency approaches. And as a result, they are as big as you see today. So that's pretty much the cusp of everything here. If you want to actually find out more about the profit-driven marketing approach and actually a step-by-step guide, if you go to thinkwithgoogle.com, there is plenty of material on the profit-driven marketer approach. Otherwise, I'll be back on stage, I think in about 25 minutes, if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
That's great. So we're really getting to the nub of the issue here. How do we make this profitable? How do we really drive financial results for our business? So thanks to Dave for sharing those insights and those great tips and tricks. And again, as we said up front, we wanted to be controversial today. We wanted to throw some ideas at you that you may not feel that comfortable with, but we're here about having an open mind and changing the way that we do things. So what we're going to do now is we're going to change pace a little bit, and we're actually going to get somebody up on stage that has lived and breathed this, lived and breathed B2B and performance. So I'm really pleased that we've got Titus Sharpe with us, and Titus is the co-founder and CEO of MVF. MVF is one of the largest companies that provides volume leads for B2B companies. And what's really impressive about their business is that it's been ranked #1 in the Sunday Times top 100 tech companies. It's won a Queen's Award, so a hugely successful company, and I cannot wait to hear what Titus has to say and the insights that he can share with us. Welcome, Titus. Thank you. Thanks.
Wow, that's quite something to follow. I wanted to start off today by offering you very, very actionable points. We won the Tech Tac for a variety of reasons, and it came down to our customer acquisition strategies. So in my presentation, I want to give you really, really really simple strategies that you can employ in your business. Some of you probably already are doing these, but I think it's worth sharing with these strategies across all types of customer acquisition. So I thought I'd start off by just giving you a bit of background, because you're probably wondering who the hell I am standing up here. My background is in artificial intelligence. That's where my degree and my PhD, that's where I started. And then I've been in the digital startup space for nigh on 20 years since then. In 2001, I set up a company called Media Digital Agency, and I sold it to a company called Zone Content. And then more recently, I founded a business called Approved Index in 2004. And I built that business to be the UK's largest B2B marketplace. And I sold it to a company called Reed Elsevier, a FTSE 100 company. And more recently, I bought it back in 2013. Thank you very much, Reed Elsevier. Since I left Reed in 2009, I've been building this business, global MVF, and we help customers all around the world our clients all around the world acquire new customers. And we do this in a variety of ways. And this is what I'm going to allude to in the 7 strategies. But I want to share a few stats about MVF very, very quickly. So first of all, we're 5 years old. We operate in 60 countries around the world. That's marketing in 60 countries around the world. We cover 25 languages across our about 130 marketing staff within MVF. We've got 2,000 clients, and we operate in about 80 B2B verticals. And we operate in lots and lots of different B2B verticals, from sort of professional training, a bit of finance, office products such as telephone systems, photocopiers, a whole variety of fleet management systems, a whole variety of different B2B verticals. So we've got a nice sort of wide experience in lots of different B2B markets. Here's some of our clients, and finally some of our B2B brands. So Expert Market is one of the sites we utilize to generate large volumes of high-quality leads for our clients. That's around the world. We've got Approved Index in the UK, and we've got a German brand called von Fachmann as well. So moving rapidly on to strategies that you can employ. So the first strategy I want to introduce is a concept that I really came across from talking to one guy at Expedia. And he was the marketing director of Expedia, and he said he'd recently changed the structure of his PPC teams. And he changed the structure, which really struck me quite why he changed it. And he changed the structure of his PPC team so that they weren't organized by language. So he didn't have a sort of English team and a French team and a Spanish team. That's how they used to do it. But now it was organized by city. So the London hotel market had their own Spanish speaker, their own English speaker, and their own German speaker within that team. And he explained to me why, because the proximity of the digital marketing team to the actual commercial team had a huge impact. And so the digital marketing team, who were focused on the London market, could react very, very quickly to changes in what the sales team was selling and how they were selling and how well they were selling. So that the reactivity of your marketing team to your sales sort of landscape has a huge impact at your profit. And I think sort of Dave alluded to this as well. It's knowing your profit scape can have a huge impact on the business. So I want to give you 2 scenarios to try and illuminate this point further. So first example, you've got a salesperson who's covering the northwest of England. They've been a very, very good salesperson, and they've just announced they're going on maternity leave. So if you think about how this might manifest itself in reports for your business, you might get a report in 2 or 3 months' time where you see a tail off of sales in the northwest of England. So you're only going to be reacting to that if you're monitoring reports to that sort of bit of information 3 months down the line rather than immediately. So if you've got a sales team and a marketing team that work together and they discover this, they can react to it very, very quickly. So knowing your profit scape is incredibly important. The next example I want to give is you're selling well into the automotive industry, but your product isn't working so well in the pharmaceutical industry. And your sales reports might not be comprehensive enough to actually tell you this. But you can probably, if you've got a digital marketing team that's working very closely with the sales team, you can understand this point and maybe bid far more aggressively in the automotive industry and less aggressively in the pharmaceutical industry. So it's these subtleties of how well your sales team's performing, and it constantly evolves that as well. So you've got to stay on top of it. So the question I pose to you all is, can your digital marketing team get access to the right information needed to react fast enough? And very often you might see that there's a sales team sitting over there on that side of London, and there's a digital marketing team sitting somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in a different office. And is there enough information flowing between them? So we've taken a radical step within our business. It's had a huge impact on our business, where we've actually merged the sales team and the marketing team together, so they sit in the same office and they can communicate rapidly about where the big sales opportunities are. And that speed has really, really helped push our profits. So there's one strategy. I want to move on to the next one. Strategy 2, this is around our sort of publishing and SEO strategy. We have about 30 in-house in the publishing team. And in our B2B space, there's 2 key strategies that we employ. And I've just tried to boil it down and distill it down into these 2 points. So we have the mundane strategy, what we call dull but important B2B content. Some example of titles might be, do franking machines save money on postage? That's the type of exciting title that we publish, and we really go to great depths about making a great bit of content around that sort of topic. There's video in there, there's lots of tables, it's really, really deep content. Likewise, UK printer and copier service agreements, really fascinating stuff. And then I like to sort of, with B2B content, you've got to create another strategy, which is about the exciting human interest content. And I'll give you some examples of things we've done that have had great effects. So the coolest businesses in Colorado and the Gender Gap Report 2014. This one was really sort of what we call ego bait, where we're going out there and saying, your businesses are amazing. And so those businesses end up sharing it with all their friends. And the Gender Gap Report, really we're sort of piggybacking off this sort of new wave of feminism and applying a business angle to it. And you'll see the difference in sort of social footprint for these articles. We get 12,000 shares on Facebook there, and we get 1 on these types of articles. So you can see the extreme difference in these 2 strategies, but they're both really important strategies. So this type of strategy, that's great for things like getting search listings and having useful product information on your site. But this is where you get your link profile and your domain authority and your social footprint up. So very, very important to have your foot in both camps when it comes to B2B publishing. Next up, I want to talk about utilizing video, and there's been lots of talk from Hanne about how you can use video. I want to talk specifically about on-site video rather than YouTube-based video promotions. And so there's really 2 ways. We've got a team in-house now who do videos for us, and there's 2 ways that we see, 2 metrics that we see have had a huge impact on our sites. So one is conversion rate. By having good videos on the site, we've seen conversion rate massively, massively lift. And it's obviously the strategic positioning of where that video is in relation to your conversion tool. And the second thing that we've seen is time on site go up and bounce rate go down. And obviously this is a nice way of sort of future-proofing your site for algorithm changes. And obviously this is a slightly harder, more tangible ones to sort of quantify. This is obviously very easy because it has immediate impact on your cost of acquisition and how much profit you're making out of your marketing, whereas this is less tangible. But one thing we have noticed by deploying this video strategy, we have not been hit by any of the penguin, the panda, the hummingbird updates at all. Because of one of the reasons is because of this video strategy. So again, utilizing video, and it's interesting hearing Hanne's talk about how video can have such a big impact and how more B2B decision makers are actually using it. So these are the things that it really, really impacts on your site. Strategy 4, maximizing CRM nurturing. And I've kind of gone really back to basics. So I'm trying not to be sort of too obvious, but I thought it worth some findings that we've found in our B2B CRM team. So one thing that we're very behaviorally driven, so that when we see behavior, someone opening an email, for example, we've started to build programs where we send more volume to them based on them opening and clicking through that data. So what was really surprised us, we were sending maybe on a monthly basis for people who are interacting with our email campaigns. We've actually tried it to a weekly basis, and we haven't seen any drop-off on deliverability or open rate. So don't be afraid by trialing more volume to the user if you're getting good behavioral engagement. Obviously, one other thing that we've been working very much on in the B2B space is working out optimum send times for your market. And certain B2B markets, it's very much during the office hours. And other B2B markets, it's more sort of in the evenings that you get optimum open rates and click-through rates. So sort of some sort of very pure B2B markets, it tends to be sort of the middle of the week in the mornings that you get best open rates. And for the more sort of something like professional training where it's could be conceived as more consumer than B2B, you kind of get better open rates in the evening. So work out for your market what is the optimum send time, and obviously focus on sending at that time. This might sound blindingly obvious, but we work a bit in the consumer space as well. In certain consumer markets, plain HTML, plain emails works better, but for B2B, we always find that HTML works better, and there's no denying that. So it's kind of obvious that, but I think it's worth telling you guys. Another thing, obviously, emails are far more important on mobile than they are on desktop in B2B. So sending B2B emails, make sure that your call to action is actually above the mobile fold, and really test on that basis. This has had a huge impact on our click-through rates on email. So, and I can't remember what the ratio is of people opening mobile emails versus desktop emails, but this has had a big impact on the effectiveness of our CRM campaigns. So that's some tips for CRM. Strategy 5, invest in conversion rate testing. And I'm sure most of you will be doing this, but I just wanted to give you some basic strategies that we've learned over the years of doing this. So set up Google Analytics event tracking or another package like it. So the event tracking is a wonderful tool that allows you to really sort of understand exactly the shape of your funnel and where people are dropping off. And very often, if you've got a form that people are filling out, you'll find you'll get drop-off around tricky questions. So something you might feel is quite simple can actually be incredibly hard for a user to answer. So very often you see drop-off there. And obviously, sometimes around contact details, you see great big drop-offs as well. So it's really worth learning about where people are dropping off on your site, and make sure you've got this set up so you can monitor those drop-offs. With all CR activity, simplicity is the best. Less text, more pictures, lots of white space. It really works. Trials, social proof mechanics. We've been doing this for probably about 10 years now, looking at different social proof mechanics. And in certain markets, they're using the likes of number of Facebook likes, for example, on the bottom of a page, can have, where it's more consumer-led, it can have an impact. And so there's lots of other things that you can use, such as LinkedIn, the LinkedIn strength of your site, that type of thing is social proof mechanics, and test those types of things on your site. And this kind of blindingly obvious, just ensure the clarity of your key benefit on that mechanism you're using to actually get that contact with that client. And finally, one thing, when you're actually doing CRO testing, ensure that you're testing your mobile site separately from your desktop site. Even though it might actually be the same page, run your tests separately. So do A/B testing over here with your mobile and do CD testing over there with your desktop traffic. So split them out because they are two different entities. So I want to sort of show you two very quick case studies. It's kind of trying to highlight some of these benefits. So this is one of our sites, Expert Market. We work in the vehicle tracking space. So this is very early on. You'll see the sort of the main conversion buttons just underneath the fold there. And then we've brought it up and we have it has a positive impact on conversion rate. And then we started to make these a bit more sort of nice to look at. And then finally, we've added some more sort of graphical buttons, and that's had a better impact as well. So that even evolve your mobile site as much as you evolve your desktop site. And going back to the sort of simplicity of your core benefit, here is an example. Here's one of our sites here, showing a franking machine. And on this one, we added this nice edge here, and we included this save 40% on postage benefit here. And that had a 30% uplift in conversion rate. So huge, profound impact just for the blatant message there and the sort of clear outline around it. So skipping on to strategy 6, speed up your lead response times. Now, we work both in the B2B and the B2C industry, and this is something that we see across pretty much every industry that we operate in. So in this graph, you'll see that it shows the sort of the percentage of qualification of every lead that comes into a business. And if you contact it within an hour, the percentage massively jumps up. If you contact it within 2 hours, the percentage is way down, 3 hours, and so on. If you jump up to within that hour, you'll see that the first 5 minutes are so critical, and they can have a huge impact on your whole marketing and sales campaign by the speed in which you respond. And it's interesting, we looked at this across both sort of products that have short sales cycles and products that have long sales cycles. And you still see pronounced effect in long sales cycle. So for example, we work in the MBA market. And in MBA, it might take 18 months to make a decision as to whether you do an MBA. And still in those markets, the speed of response in that first 5 minutes is really, really critical to the amount of sales you'll get from those inquiries. So really, and some really interesting research around that. So I want to share these two. If you do some searches on Google, of course, you can find the reports there that might be useful for your business. And finally, kind of obvious, but I think it's worth talking about our experience in our channel expansion. So when I launched Approved Index way back in 2004, this is what our channel sort of mix looked like. And nowadays, you can get hugely variety. There's so many different platforms out there now. I think I did a calculation last night, and for our UK B2B market, we have 46 different channels that generate us volume. Consider that. And I think there's some really interesting platforms coming out all the time that are worth testing. What you do find on new platforms, there tend not to be that many other customers on it, so you can actually get quite good CPAs off new platforms. So keep your eyes open for new platforms coming through. And also, MVF can help if you've got a call center infrastructure. We can help with driving you massive high-quality volumes. And finally, obviously, thinking about what expansion of channels means. Obviously, you can increase your volume, obvious, really. You can obviously negotiate across all your channels to get lower CPA. But obviously, reduction of risk is quite important, particularly in the old days when my old business was very, very, very reliant on SEO. If you have an algorithm change and you lose 50% traffic, that's a big chunk of your sales gone. So having a nice spread of channels gives you a nice sort of de-risking strategy. So that's my 7 strategies that we've used to really, really accelerate our business and become this very, very fast-growing tech company. In fact, the fastest last year in the UK. And I hope those are useful and practical solutions for your business, and you can actually put some of these into use. You're probably doing quite a lot of this, but I hope some of those are interesting. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you. We're just going to have a few questions from the floor. That's great. That was great. Some real insight and understanding there for somebody that's actually been there, lived it, and driven it forward. It's great to hear talking about CRM nurturing. In our digital ether, we often forget about some of the basics that are really, really important. I'd like to invite Dave back up as well. So maybe open up the floor just to a couple of questions to either Dave or Titus. So do we have any questions? Any burning questions front of mind? No? So maybe I'll oh, there is somebody over there. Oh, Stuart again. Thank you. There's a mic just coming.
There's some great insight from the report that you've just done. Will it be available for the guys, or will there be the edited version available for us to have a look at? Yes,
so certainly anything that's Google content, we'll share that with you, and we'll check with all of the presenters if they're happy to share their presentations as well. So we'll get an email and set up a site and send that across to you. Yeah, so fantastic. So maybe a question from me. Titus, you've been through this process a lot. What have you seen as the most dramatic change over the last couple of years in terms of the way that you're getting leads and opportunities?
I think it's the changes in the display channel in terms of the ability to use data, use behavioural information to actually target people on display is a massive opportunity in B2B.
So are you using things like programmatic and
absolutely, yeah, RTB, all of that. And then trialing lots of, it's about trialing lots of them. Yeah. And there's, there's certain ones that give you this sort of data, they've got interesting data angle, or they've got an interesting behavioural angle that I'm still hoping that Google is going to open up maybe some of their behavioural search data so that we can advertise towards it. But
well, we've got somebody speaking about all of that sort of stuff later, so please stay with us. I'm not sure there's going to be a tipping point in the news that we're going to share, but some good stuff anyway. So Dave, from your perspective, I mean, you're very much looking at this change of mindset. In the past, we used to talk about last-click attribution and almost point of sale or basket size. Now we're looking at far wider things. How quickly do you think companies are actually transitioning to
It really depends on the company itself. I mean, we've been working with a few people over the last few months on this, and we've seen people that have really bought into the concept. And I think, Titus, you brought up the example of like the proximity to, some of these stakeholders has been a big impact on this. So if the CMO and the CFO are sitting together, they can work quite collaboratively on this. If the digital teams, the buying teams, and the sales teams are all sitting close together, again, it can happen quite quickly. The important thing is, though, to really go at your own pace. I mean, it's not about trying to do this straight away, and you don't really want to go out there and try to achieve this without really getting a full idea of who the customer is and, have everybody within the business bought in. Because, if you go out with a strategy that is incomplete, you're not going to get a full picture of what you can actually achieve.
Fantastic. So both of you have mentioned this proximity piece. It's about having people close together. Are there any tips for, because we've got a number of agencies in the room, and sometimes they're given one metric that they need to work to, and they're brilliant at doing that, and that's fantastic. Is there something that they can bring back to the brand and the client to talk about from a wider experience? I mean,
I would say sort of that's getting a monthly sales report. The way in which that sales report's constructed can have a huge impact on how effective you can be. So the way in which it's split up, and whether you can do clever things with pivot tables on that sales report could have a huge impact on how profitable you can make the client's business. So that's that monthly sale, or maybe if you get a daily sales report that can be you can utilise to react quickly to changes in their sales force and what's going on within the sales force. That could have a big impact.
So again, it's about that real-time data. And having that big data, but being able to pull out those nuggets.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate both those great presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I now want to kind of change the view, change the landscape that we're looking at, and moving maybe a little bit away from the performance side and the ROI and the profitability. And start to bring into play what we think is really, really important. And I think we're all aware of that, which is one about the emotional connection with our customers. How do we actually create that? How do we create a link with them that is far more than just a transaction or a commodity, a utility buy? And I'm really pleased that Johanna is going to come up on stage and actually give us her views in terms of how brand is playing in the market, the importance of that, and some tactics on how you can actually go out and make the most of that, make the most of those connections. So please join me in welcoming Johanna. Thank you.
Right, good afternoon, everybody. How's it been so far? Good? Yeah? Sore bums or still okay? Okay, good, fine. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about brands and B2B. And we'll take sort of 20 minutes talking about that. And it was very funny because when Hanne sort of asked me to come and speak here, she was a little bit worried that I didn't have any B2B experience. However, what she didn't know at the time was that I actually started my career as the account exec on Sun Microsystems and Oracle at Starcom MediaVest. Do we have any SMVers in the room? That doesn't look like it. But anyway, this is where I started. There were still two separate companies at the time. And even more so, in 2004, we won as a team, a computing award, which was very exciting at the time. And there somewhere is a great photo of myself, my boss at the time, and Jack D, which at the time was very, very, very good for me. And even more so, underneath the photo, it sort of goes into the names, and it says Jack D, and it says my boss's name, and it says Kirsty Thomas, which was actually one of my colleagues at the time. So that was my claim to fame in the B2B world, getting my name wrong on there, but never mind. But so then I started to think about that time coming to talk to you today and how we used to work and what we used to do. And there was really always a 3-letter acronym that sort of ruled our lives. We talked about it all the time. A lot of our work revolved around it. Does anybody know what 3-letter acronym that might be? I'll give you a clue. It starts with a B. B2B? Close? BDM. Brilliant. See, someone got it. Absolutely. So we were talking about BDMs, which obviously, hopefully, rings true for you at the moment still. And at the time, they were generally characterized by different things. So they were all C-level. They generally wore grey suits. They loved a trademark, so PC World Computing, whatever it may be. And they were really, really into golf. So at the time, that was sort of who we were targeting. And I know that you've seen these slides before because Hanne took them through you, but just to remind ourselves that in the purchasing process in B2B, there are actually a lot of involvement across the board. So a lot of non-C-level executives have influence. And actually, these influencers are often quite young. So 72% are younger than 45 years old. So probably, it might not even be into golf, who knows. But I want to really take this time here to talk to you about how to speak to these guys as real people. Because ultimately, that is what branding is all about. Branding is about people, and branding is about creating an emotional connection. Now, and if you think, yeah, but we're B2B, it's not really that relevant for us, I'd like to share a stat or a bit of research with you, which actually looks at the emotional involvement in the purchasing process of different brands. And what we see here is that the emotional involvement that people have is actually much higher for B2B brands than most B2C brands. And if you think about it, it really makes sense. You won't get fired for buying the wrong soft drink or maybe the wrong makeup or something else. But choosing a B2B brand is actually something that is your career, is your reputation, and you really don't want to get it wrong. So it's important to get that connection. And at the moment, it seems sometimes B2B is very focused on very functional attributes, and it doesn't really get to make that connection as strongly as it could do. So the other thing that I'd invite you, for this talk at least, is stop thinking about B2B and start thinking about B2P, which is business to people. So how do we do that? And how do we actually build a brand in the B2B world? And ultimately, it comes down to exactly the same things as it is for B2C brands. Building brands in this world is all about finding the right people, telling great stories, and building relationships with them over time. And the internet, so let's talk about finding the right people first, because the internet has really changed this, because it is the first time that we now can have this two-way conversation with our audience. They constantly tell us who they are, what they're interested in, what they want, what they need, you name it, through their actions on the net. And we now have the opportunity to actually respond to that. And there's been research has been done time and time again that shows that ads that use audience signals are much, much more effective than ads that aren't targeted. And I mean, these numbers are crazy, so it's like 5,000 something %. So handle with care, but it is true. It makes it so much more relevant and so much better. And even more so, today, we have a lot of choice-based advertising around. And choice-based advertising actually allows us to quite bluntly ask our audience if they are interested in something. So if you think about it, this is an example, so you probably all know TrueView, I would have hoped at least. Yes, a few nods. Anybody who doesn't know TrueView? Good, perfect. So, I mean, this is our choice-based solution, but there are loads of others out there. And I would invite you to think about choice-based advertising and TrueView not as a skippable ad, but as an invitation to connect with your content. Ask as many people as you want, hey, are you interested in this? It is a great way of finding people who are interested in what you have to say and what you have to sell. So let's talk a little bit about telling great stories. And telling great stories or great stories are generally about stories that mean something. And I actually have an example here. So Grainger, has anybody seen this before? So Grainger's company, I think they do loads of sort of logistics and systems and make stuff work, basically. This is about as far as my knowledge goes of them. But I want to show you what they've done. Could we, what video?
Every man I know has at least a Purple Heart. That's how serious casualties. Because when you're at this for 80 days, and you're in an atmosphere that anything you do could get you killed, to survive all of that, it's not good planning, it's just good luck. My name is Dick Whitaker. I graduated high school in June of 1944, and I entered the United States Marine Corps the following month. On March 13th, 1945, which happened to be my 19th birthday, we boarded ships again.
So we don't need to actually watch all of this, but I hope it gives you a little bit of an idea. They could have just talked about their product, but what Grainger has done, no, let me just go one back here. But what Grainger has done is actually go, well, we do all this stuff, what happens on the other side? Let's celebrate some of these unsung heroes that have some sort of connection with our product, and it's much more interesting. It's a story. It's something that people can relate to. The other thing about stories is sometimes you can actually go out and search or create stories where they're most needed. And I'm not sure, have any of you heard about the unboxing phenomenon? No, sometimes sort of little nods and one hand up over there, which is great. But unboxing is a video phenomenon from over the last sort of year and a bit, which means there are lots of videos of people receiving a product, opening it, and showing that experience for the first time. So at the moment, there are a lot of mobile phone unboxing things. It is, at the moment, research says that 1 in 5 people will have seen an unboxing video. There are hardly any interesting unboxing stories out there. Do you ever think about, what happens if someone actually signs that contract with you? They've gone through this emotional choice and they've done everything. Have you ever told the story of what actually happens and how it feels to implement that? These are the types of things which actually interest people and which are great opportunities for you and the brand to get much closer to people. And then there's product videos. We all have product features, and I think in B2B, there are a lot of product features around. Even there's a way of telling much more interesting stories. Now, this is an example actually from B2C, but all it is a demo of a product feature. And this is Samsung and their new Galaxy, I think it's S5 phone. And this phone has a product feature that it knows when you look at it. So let's see what they've done with that. This is a product feature video. I think it seemed at least that you all were enjoying that much more than someone telling you how this technology works and what it does, because it showed you. So, oops. So then finally, let's talk a little bit about building relationships over time. Now, I want you to imagine something. There's a salesperson that comes and talks to you, and he says, hello, I'm, let's say, John, and are you interested in this? This is my product. And then you meet John every day for a month. Every day John comes, and every day you meet John, he says, hello, my name is John. Are you interested in this? Relationships are built via recognition, and relationships are built via actually reacting to what people do and what people say to you. And again, online gives us this amazing opportunity to actually build stories for our audience. Think about, if someone, we know all these things, we know who's already watched a video, we know who's searched for something. You guys in B2B have more signals than most other industries. CRM systems, you know who your newsletter went to. Think about how you're communicating to these people, and think about how you're speaking to them and actually getting them through a story. If they haven't been interested after seeing your ad for one of your products for the 5th, 6th, 10th time, show them something else. Or ask them, engage in different ways, and actually build a story. It's much more personal and possible now to do that. So it's crazy. 20 minutes is so little time, so I only have about 5 minutes left. But the last thing that I want to do is talk to you about my favorite ever B2B example, at the moment at least. And it's one that you all know. So what I'm going to try to do is give you a little bit of context around it, and hopefully a little bit of information that you didn't know. So I want to talk about this guy. We all know him, right? The Volvo Trucks epic split. It's an amazing piece of content. It was actually done without any CGI. So this actually did happen, which is quite incredible for a slightly older guy who looks like his face is melting off. But it does, isn't it? A bit weird. So this is a great piece of hero content, which has gone around the world. And by now, some people actually don't think of this as B2B anymore. So it's almost, whoa, too many people have seen it. It's not us. So, but Volvo has not only created this one piece of amazing content, they've been really busy. And they actually have a lot of videos out there which are interesting, tell stories, and have millions and millions and millions of views. And this is sort of the hero stuff. This is the big things that they bring out. A lot of them live online, which is nice, and really create a connection with consumers. But because Volvo has done such a great job in doing that, they also then have videos like this. So an engineer actually talking about this technology of dynamic steering, which is part of the epic split. And this video, which is an engineer talking through the technicality of it, has over 1.3 million views. And I can bet you that most of the people that have watched through this video are either truck drivers, fleet managers, or people that have some sort of interest in that. And this is what they've done. They haven't focused on finding the guy in the grey suit that loves to play golf. They have gone, right, do you know what? I'm talking to people here. I'm talking to a wide mass of people, and I'm going to see who's interested in what I have to say. And they also tell a lot of personal stories. So Volvo has done a whole series of truck drivers, welcome to my cab videos. So truck drivers are very, very precious about their cab. They decorate them and they put photos of their family in there. And like some of the examples are actually quite mad when you look at them and you see them. But those are humans, and they're human stories, and they show that Volvo really wants to do B2P rather than B2B. So this is sort of what I almost want to leave you with, this sort of thought. Next time you are creating your next campaign, or you're creating your next, I don't know, engagement with your customer, if you want to talk, say it like that, think about B2P. Because if you do what you've always done, you get what you always got. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Johanna, thank you so much. That was great. That real kind of bringing it to life, that it's not B2B, it's B2P. It's about humanizing. And I think earlier today we've talked about humanizing our content and how important that is, how to make those emotional connections that mean you can actually really start to build a proper long-term relationship. And obviously there's many ways of doing that through content, including video.